Um, Insurance is the big one. Oh, we went into confidentiality. That's a pretty important. We've touched on it. We don't have to dive into it too much, I don't think. Um, Most MSAs are going to have it 12 months after you finish working. You can't disclose anything, yada, yada. That's pretty straightforward. Molly probably has a tremendous amount of case law and litigation behind the nuance of it. But from a practical standpoint as landmen, you want to adhere to your code of ethics. You want to keep information confidential. And I never mark through anything in a confidentiality provision, in general. Go into a good faith. Our business practices keep that confidential. And if you're doing things as you should be, you're not risking information getting out there. But what is always at the bottom of that for in our space is the non-compete language. It usually falls in right behind it in that paragraph. And again, I touched on it earlier. Typical kind of industry standard is 12 months after you finish working. But you want to address scope. You want to define what's going to create a non-compete area, and you want to define, how that's going to look. Is it tied to the geographic area? Is it a mile outside of it? Is it 5 miles outside of it? Just you want to understand those things, and if you're running a good firm, you want to be able to monitor it, and that's the biggest thing. You want it to be concrete enough such that you can define it, track it, and adhere to it. I think there's a lot of trust that goes into hiring a broker. And I think if you're going to sign off on that as a service provider, you need to be able to adhere to it. So you want to protect yourself from not being overly burdened with non-compete for, I mentioned it earlier, short-term job, a big, broad, in-house staffing project. We see that all the time. We're doing a top secret leasing job for someone, but then we staff someone in-house as well, and they've got them working on, you know, pay decks and division orders and projects at a corporate level that are, across entire counties. Well, you want to clarify that in your non-compete such that if I'm doing leasing for you, then I'm exclusive to you for a period of time after I'm done. But if I'm doing this broad sweeping project, well, that's not going to create a non-compete.
Yeah, courts don't love non-competes, right? Because they want people to be able to move and work as they need to and everything. But all reiterating everything that you just said, specificity, term limits, what's actually you're trying to keep confidential, that'll be enforced. As long as it's reasonable, is the big thing. The courts will uphold all of that stuff and hold people to that, and penalties can ensue if there's a violation. So yeah, just be specific and include a term. And 12 months is right in the wheelhouse. So
Right. Sweet spot. It's the most
yeah,
emotional reaction that I get from clients. It's as a landman, if you're dealing with a land manager, they're very aware of that. They're very aware of like what we're hiring you to do is confidential, it's top secret. I don't want you coming in my block. So typically when I mark that up, it always comes with a phone call to explain why. That I'm not trying to be able to go buy minerals in your area, but these are the real world circumstances that potentially I could be in violation just by going through a normal course of business. So it's good to address it. It's good to also talk through it with whoever you're working through so that they understand your perspective.
yeah.
Dispute resolution, basically. Again, Molly could probably go for days. The practical thing is there's not a dispute until there's a problem. And most of the time it just, the reality is as a service provider, if there's a dispute, you're just not going to get paid, as a landman, as a service provider, as a professional service provider, you can't go file a lien on someone. It's not upheld, right? As a landman. So it's in most MSAs. Typically I don't even mark through it. It's like, okay, it is what it is. I mean, we're subject to this and you can do that. Molly can give probably a lot more detailed and maybe some nuance to that. I'd love to kind of hear if I'm just glossing over this
No,
with my client.
look, I mean, it's gonna, again, the MSA it defines the general outward or the general framework and everything. And so look, typically there's arbitration provisions in there, which in oil and gas and in other businesses as well, not just in oil and gas. But the thought is that if you can go to arbitration, there's either a 1 to 3 judge panel, sometimes 5, and they are folks that know this business, right? So you don't have to say, well, here's what an MSA is, or, here's what a landman does. They know that. They know the business. They've practiced in the business. They've practiced law in the business. They may be landmen themselves. So they know that. And so there's a level of sophistication that's presumed there, that allows the parties to say this is what the dispute is, and not start with the very, very beginning and the very basics of explaining it to the way that you may have to with a jury. Um, again, pros and cons on each side, right? So pros, sophisticated folks know the business, know how it works, know what actually happens as opposed to what we put on paper happens, those types of things. Cons to that, they typically split the baby. It's rare that one side is absolutely going to win and get everything that they want, or that one side's going to win and pay $0.00. Does it happen? Sure, but it's the rare thing. It's like, okay, how does somebody get a little bit of everything? Um, mediation is like most. Even if you go to standard litigation, you're going to go to mediation anyway. So those aren't as typical things that we see. But sometimes MSAs will say we've got to go to mediation before you can file a lawsuit, and see if we can resolve this. Look, uh, I am the biggest proponent of, if you can avoid litigation, do it. I'm here if you need me, but if you can avoid it, by all means, do it. It's costly. It's expensive. Nobody gets what they want out of the whole thing. It can ruin business relationships. Your company's tied up. Your employees are tied up. You're having to answer my phone calls and deal with this and go to hearings and, all these types of things. So if you can avoid it, absolutely. So sometimes a mediation before filing a lawsuit can be beneficial to say, look, all right, everybody cool off, back to your corners. All right, let's sit down and let's have a conversation and figure out what we can move and agree to. Um, and then certainly, take a look at the jurisdiction as to where the suit's going to be filed. I mean, I can break down county by county in Texas about where are better counties, but it all depends. 10 years ago, I'd say, great, Dallas County, Harris County, awesome, file suits there all day long. And now I'm like, nope, those juries, they are pro plaintiff juries, which may be good for you if that's the side you're on. But they are returning very large, very high verdicts. So just pay attention to that. In New Mexico there's some other things that, you may not want to be in New Mexico, depending on different reasons, if you can avoid it, and some other things. So, that certainly bleeds into kind of the final one, which is have somebody take a look at it. Anybody lawyers or anything that would take a look at it would certainly have some opinions about that. In which venues are more friendly or not. But yeah, there's some, again, avoid litigation at all costs. Avoid it, which I get is counterintuitive to me being a litigator in oil and gas. But yeah, so if
Well,
there
that's
are
how
other
you can
ways
charge
around it.
such high rates.
Well,
That's
yeah,
it's
gotta,
valuable.
I gotta
When you're
make up
there,
for it.
when
Yeah,
you
I
need
gotta
me,
make
you
up
need
for
me.
it. That's it. Yeah, call me now or call me
Uh,
later, right? So,
That's
uh,
right.
but yeah, so they are important. I care about them, right? You guys, it's not going to affect how you guys do your business and your services that you're providing or anything, but I certainly care. And if I get to set the chess pieces a little bit beforehand, then that's something I want to do.